Okay, hello everybody. Can you see me? No, I don't. Yes, now you can see me. I hope so. Okay, now you can see me. Hello everybody. Now we start. So I am very happy to see you online for this last evening of Pint of Science 2020 online edition. I am Karine Signoret, and I work with Pint of Science Festival in Sweden with Stephanie Hale, who is also online. And we have also a lot of different teams, mainly in Stockholm, Uppsala, Lund, and Hovde, who help us. And this evening, Gonzalo Brito will also help us to manage this meeting. So I will briefly presenting Pint of Science, but I think that all of you already know what it is about. Pint of Science is about sharing science with society. So we have the aim to deliver interesting and relevant talks on the latest science research in an accessible format to the public. And what we want is to provide a platform which allows people to discover and discuss research. No prior knowledge of the subject is required. You can ask all the questions you want to the speaker. That is really, really what we want, to be accessible research. Pint of Science has begun with a first festival in UK 2013, and we have imported this concept in Sweden in 2019. So the last year we have that festival in real life, can we say? And that year, due to the consequences, you know, to the circumstances, I mean, you know, we are online. And that's the third evening this evening. We have had more than 500 participants last year in the real life. And now with the sharing online, we hope that we can reach even more people and people who cannot go to the pub, for example, so they can be at home and they can share science with us. So the program for the 3 evening was on Monday. We have had Mathieu Linares and David Doquier. Yesterday we have had Claudia Moore and Isabel Pires. And this evening we will have first Miguel Sanchis Sebastia and then Anis Meschichi, that will be the last speaker for this Pint of Science edition. So we will begin now with our first speaker, who is Miguel. Miguel is currently a PhD student at the Department of Chemical Engineering at Lund University in the technical faculty. He did his undergraduate studies in chemical engineering in Valencia. I think it's in Spain. You will correct me if it's not correct. And his PhD studies focus on circular economy and sustainability. So he also started research investigating into the valorization of animal fertilizer and is now working on the recycling of waste textiles. So please, Miguel, you can now begin and join us. I will stop to share my screen and then you can share yours. Yeah, it is your turn now. Can you hear us, Miguel?
Yes.
Yes, and we can see your screen. That's perfect. You're very welcome.
Thank you, Karen. So can you see the slides now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So today I'm going to talk about fashion, but I'm also going to talk about sustainability and how we can reduce the carbon footprint of this industry, which I will show you is not like small nowadays. So to start with, there are many people that like fashion and like to keep themselves updated about like the new trends that come in the market. But I'm sure that even if you are not a fan of fashion, everyone enjoys like buying a cool new t-shirt every now and then, or like dressing up for like that special event. So there are a lot of new clothes like entering the market all the time. But today I'm not gonna focus on that side of fashion. I'm gonna focus on old clothes instead of new clothes, and what happens to old clothes once they're thrown away. So unfortunately, the answer is that most likely your old clothes will end up in a landfill. There are huge piles of wax textiles all over the world. And this is because every week we throw away no less than 11 million garments. And those end up in landfills, creating this huge environmental problem. And just to give you an idea of how big this problem is, 11 million garments is the same as throwing away 2,750 cars or enough clothes to fill 40,000 wardrobes. So and remember that this is what we throw away in just 1 week. So the amount of waste textiles flooding the world are just like enormous. And then the question is, why does this happen? Why are there so many waste textiles coming into the landfills? Well, to answer that question, we need to look at something that is called the sustainability ladder. So here we have several strategies to handle a waste, and each strategy or each step in the ladder is less and less sustainable. So of course, we want to be as high up as possible. So the best strategy to handle waste is reduce, which means not producing the waste in the first place. And I think awareness is increasing a lot in this aspect, but here the fashion industry needs to take a good look in the mirror and revise their business models, because billions of clothes are being produced every year, and almost 30% of it is never sold due to like out fashion clothes or like inventory losses. So there's a lot that the industry can do here. Of course, we as individuals can go into the second step very easily and reuse the clothes and repair them as much as possible. So here we will have strategies like sewing or patching all clothes before throwing them away. Or specifically here in Sweden, for example, we have associations like Human Breeds that collect all clothes to like resell them as much as possible, or like put them to good use. And now it's where the problem starts, because from reusing or repairing, we just jump over directly into incineration or disposal. So here you have again like the huge pile of textiles in a landfill, and the other picture is like a picture of an incineration plant in Västerås, very close to Stockholm, that incinerated no less than 15 tons of waste textiles in 2017. So you see that these amounts are like huge. And the reason for that is that there is no textile recycling. When you go to your recycling to your containers, you have one for plastics, one for glass, cardboard, but there's nothing for textiles.
Sorry, Miguel, can I
Yeah.
interrupt you if there is
Yes.
question online?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I just want to ask you, does it mean that you just burn all the textile and that's it?
Well, that depends on the country. Here in Sweden, a good fraction of textiles go to incineration to recover energy from it. But in other countries, especially for example in Asia, they go directly to landfills.
Okay.
So the fraction that is like incinerated, it depends on the country. And incineration is better than disposal because at least you can use the energy that you produce during the combustion process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, truth to be told, there is a little bit of textile recycling. So, as an example, the Swedish company Sodera, started a project called Blend Rewind with two academic partners, and they developed a recycling process. But they estimated that the process won't be in the market within the next 10 years. So, still a long wait for recycling to come that way. And in Sweden as well, there is a company, Renewcell, already functioning and viable, that is recycling 7,000 tons of clothes every year. And although this seems like a lot, and it's indeed an impressive effort, 7,000 tons is what we throw away in the first 2.5 weeks of the year. So that means that for the rest of the 52 weeks that the year has, the textiles just go either to incineration in the best case or to landfill in most cases. So there is still a lot of work to do in this regard, and that's what we are trying to do in our project. So we are trying to develop new recycling processes to provide a solution for this. And our recycling processes are based on converting a pile of old clothes into a pile of sugar. And this might seem surprising and maybe even crazy to you, like how clothes can become sugar. But if you see how much these two guys look alike, then it might not seem as crazy as before. So here we have cotton, and we see that cotton can look very much like sugar. And that's because cotton is made of sugar. So if cotton is made of sugar, and why don't your clothes like taste sweet, for example? Well, the answer to that is a process that is called polymerization. So if you have a glucose syrup, there you have like the glucose molecules floating around in the liquid, like minding their own business, not really like caring about what happens to the other molecules. But then what happens in nature is that one glucose molecule can get next to another and then next to another and next to another and form a very long chain of up to like 9,000 to 15,000 like glucose molecules to form a polymer that is called cellulose. And cellulose is in fact cotton, but it is also something that you will be all very familiar with, which is paper. So cellulose is basically a lot of glucose molecules put together in long chains. And another example of a polymerization process, just to clarify this, would be, for example, plastics. So if you take ethylene, this is a gas at room temperature, but if you start putting ethylene molecules next to one another, then you will get like the plastic bottles that we use in our everyday life, or for example, the toys that children play with. So you can see how the polymerization process changes dramatically the properties of the material compared to the starting molecule. And that's why cotton clothes have nothing to do with sugar syrup, even though they are actually sugar. So our research is in fact about depolymerizing. So our goal is to break down the cellulose chains to release the glucose molecules from them. And to do this, we are investigating two different strategies. So the first one is just using like a little bit of brute force. It's like taking our part of clothes and throwing it into a concentrated acid barrel. And as you have seen in like some movies, the acid just dissolves everything that comes into its way. So after a while, the clothes completely disappear, but they form this kind of paste, not so similar as like the syrup that we are looking for. And the reason for that is that the acid is able to break down the chains, but then the reaction stops when the chain gets very short. So we don't really get to the point of getting one individual glucose molecule at a time. And the reason for this is that every time that we release a glucose molecule from the chain, we consume a molecule of water. And that's why the reaction is called hydrolysis, from hydro water, and lysis rupture or breakdown. So that means that if we have 9,000 to 15,000 glucose molecules in one chain, we need 9,000 to 15,000 water molecules just to cut one chain. And then we have millions and millions of these chains in every piece of cloth. So that means that there's just not enough water in the acid to complete the reaction and to produce glucose molecules. And that's why the reaction stops at this paste and does not go all the way to the sugar syrup. So what can we do to solve this problem? It's pretty easy. We just need to take the paste that we have formed and then add water to it, put it into a pressure cooker, and then after a while, we get our sugar syrup. And the efficiency of the process is approximately like 80%. So almost all of the cotton that was contained in the clothes becomes glucose that can be utilized afterwards. So the next strategy that we are investigating is something more like of an everyday life. So every time that you are cutting paper with a scissor, you are basically like cutting cellulose. This is the everyday way in which we all cut cellulose. So then we thought about doing something similar, like getting our own scissors and go there and cut the glucose molecules from the chain. But the problem with this is that the chain is not alone. It's very like tightly packed with other chains in the cotton clothes. So that means that the chains are very close to one another. Only a small distance between the chains. So we don't really have space to get our hand in and start like cutting the glucose molecules from the structure. So what we need to do in this case is to increase the length between the different chains so that we really have space to go and cut the molecules. And to do this, we go back to our pressurized cooker, but instead of using acid, now we're gonna use baking soda. And the reason for that is that during the cooking, the soda molecules, they're so small that they can get in between the cellulose chains. And then what happens is that these soda molecules, they create negative charges on both sides of the cellulose chain. So now we have one negative charge next to another negative charge, and we know that negative and negative, they repel one another, so they're gonna pull apart the cellulose chains, increasing the distance between the chains. And now we have ample space to come with our scissors and just start cutting the glucose molecules one by one. And of course, you can use like scissors to cut paper. That's perfectly fine. But in our case, these chains are super, super, super tiny, so small that you cannot even see them. So of course, we cannot literally use scissors. So what we use are like molecules that are called enzymes. So enzymes are like highly specialized molecules that detect where the glucose molecules are. They bind there and then they break the bond. And something similar to this is what happens every day in your body, because you have like almost 75,000 enzymes in your body. And these are responsible, among other things, for example, to breaking down the food that you eat into the nutrients that fuel your body, for example. So then now we know how we can produce sugar from clothes. But then the question is, why do we want to produce sugar in the first place? Well, sugar is the basics of almost every fermentation process. So you could just take the sugar syrup and put it in a fermenter with microorganisms to produce, for example, beer or spirits. So maybe who knows, like in a couple of years, when you go to the pub, you will have like malt beer, like wheat beer, but maybe you will also have like textile beer or like textile gin and tonic. And I know this sounds super cool, but we are not really going down this direction. Instead of alcohol, what we are, are planning to do is like use another microorganism to produce butanediol, which is another molecule that might seem like more boring than producing beer. But what's cool about butanediol is that it can be used to produce spandex or lycra. So from your old cotton clothes, you could produce new clothes to go to your like favorite gym or go to a run. And another option instead of butanediol would be to produce caprolactam, which is another molecule that is a precursor of nylon. So you could end up producing like new stockings, for example. So with these fermentation processes, we end up producing completely functional clothes from synthetic fibers from all clothes that could not be used anymore. And with this, then we could completely close the fashion loop and increase the sustainability of this industry. But the important thing about sugar is that it's completely versatile, like almost all the microorganisms feed on glucose. So that means that you can virtually produce anything that you could imagine from this sugar solution. And this was the end of my presentation. But before I finish, I just want to say that probably you've noticed that I've been talking in plural for most of the presentation. And that's because I have an amazing team working together with me, without whom I would be here today. So I really want to thank them for like being part of this project as well. And apart from that, remember that above recycling, there are two steps more in the ladder. So we are lucky enough to have the resources necessary to work in developing new recycling technologies, but all of us can really work on the reducing side and not generating waste textile. So remember that it doesn't matter how successful our recycling process is, it will never be as successful as not producing the waste in the first place. And we are really working hard to bring you that textile container to your recycling station, but you can already start from today making a difference by reducing the waste or repairing your clothes as much as possible. And with that, I want to thank you all for your attention and being here today.
Thank you very much, Miguel. That was a very, very interesting presentation, very clear. And for me, it's a topic I know nothing about. So I am so happy to have been able to understand what you say. There is question online, so if you have question, please you can write the question in the chat directly, and Miguel, maybe you can read the chat, or if you want, I can read the question for you.
Let me see.
So we have one question already. It's a question from Floran.
Yeah, it's in the question. The answer would be that the nylon or the lycra would be exactly the same as the one.
Sorry, I will just have to repeat the question because there is people online that.
Of course. Yeah.
So would the lycra and nylon made from sugar recycled from cotton be biodegradable or closer to plastic? Could they be recycled further?
So the answer is that the nylon or the lycra would be exactly the same molecule as the one that is produced today. So in that sense, it would have the same properties as the lycra or nylon clothes that we are sold today. So it wouldn't be more biodegradable than they are now. But in terms of recycling, the answer is yes. They can be recycled in the same way that, for example, plastic bottles are recycled. So there we would come into the stream of like recycling a plastic waste, which is much more established than recycling textile waste.
Okay, we have another question. Can you see that from Laura?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the first step, you recover 80% of the cotton, you say, but how much of that get lost in the rest of the process? How much of the original material can be reused?
That depends what we mean by the original material. So if we take cotton textiles, like a pure stream of cotton textiles, that's like about 95% cotton. So we are talking the 80% of 95%. So it's almost 80% as the whole process. But if you have a stream where you have the cotton clothes mixed with, for example, lycra clothes or nylon clothes or polyester clothes, then of course that would decrease the efficiency of the process because you would lose part of the cotton clothes when separating the synthetic clothes from the stream.
Yes. No more question online for now. Yes, one more. So you have a lot of comments thanking you for a very good presentation. And we have here one question from Virginia, who asked, do you estimate the cost in energy needed to recycle cotton, for example, per ton of recycled cotton or something like that?
Right now, putting a number to that, it's pretty hard. We don't have enough information to do that. But what we are working with is that at least for the second alternative that I presented, where baking soda was used, we are considering the possibility to implement that into the pulp mill, so like a paper production site, where they have excess energy. So the energy that is over or like that is not used in the paper production, it could be used for the textile valorization or for the textile recycling process. So in that sense, there would be a utility cost. I don't really know how high that would be, but we are considering the possibility of collaborating with paper production companies to make an industrial symbiosis to reduce that cost to almost zero, basically.
Great. Another question from Stephanie. Do the treatment on the clothes change the recycling? Are some treatment of textile very difficult, as Gore-Tex, for example, and all these text membrane we use for kids? Can we think about a valorization of everything in the near future?
Well, of course, there are like fibers that are more difficult to recycle than others. So I would say that Gore-Tex or like these polymeric synthetic fibers that are really specialized, they would be harder to recycle. But what makes recycling difficult rather than which kind of fiber is that you get everything mixed. So the more different kind of fibers that you have in the in the waste, the more difficult it is to recycle, because what you cannot do is recycle everything at the same time. So cotton is recycled in one way, Gore-Tex or like polyester would be recycled in another way. So that means that you need to separate everything before you can actually start the recycling processes. So separation is what makes the process difficult. And that's why in textile recycling, even though you can have like the most wonderful process ever, could still be difficult in terms of sorting. Because of course, if you put a container there, people will throw away shoes, will throw away t-shirts, dresses, almost everything. And then you would need to solve like how to sort those ones and how to classify them so that they can go to the right process.
Yeah. But you can ask people to sort out, but you after you can maybe sort out what you need and you don't. Or
yeah, exactly. I mean, in principle, now I would say that cotton fibers could be recycled, polyester fibers would be recycled, and those are like the most widely used fibers. So like almost everything that comes in could be recycled, I would say. But of course, you need the right equipment to separate those kind of fibers.
yeah. Another question from Gonzalo: why do you think the level of recycling clauses is so low? Is it a lack of research or lack of interest from the industry to change the current model of producing new things all the time?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that throwing things away is too cheap. Like nowadays, you can throw like millions and millions of clothes to the landfill, and that costs almost nothing. So you don't need to pay that much. You can just like ship the clothes to a landfill, probably in like some developing country, and that costs almost nothing. So
Yeah,
then there's
that costs
really
nothing for you, but for the humanity level and the health level, that costs a lot.
yeah, well, I mean, it costs in terms of environment, but it doesn't have an economic cost, and that's the
Yeah.
problem. Because I mean, if you are like a fashion company, I mean, they're like really profit oriented, so they're gonna. I mean, what everyone asks is always how much does it cost. So of course, recycling a cloth and recycling a textile is always going to be more expensive than throwing it away, at least at the moment. So increasing textile recycling would mean increasing the cost of throwing away things and making it more expensive to just like throw things away after one use or not even using them. On the other hand, another factor would be again the collection and the sorting. Like how do we collect the textiles and how do we sort them? Because now we have the logistics implemented for like plastic waste or for glass waste, but you would need to create such a logistic network for the textile waste as well. So you would need to put out containers and then like make an effort to educate people into like how to sort them out, how to throw them away. So I mean that's also like, and then that's also like a big aspect of recycling. And then the question is who is responsible for that?
And we don't have the answer to that.
No, of course, because I mean, then it's I mean, it's not really the recycling company that I mean is up. I mean, it's up to the people.
Yeah.
So then it's
and the producer maybe also. Great. Do we have other questions online? So you can still write your question directly to Pint of Science, maybe also directly to you, Miguel. If people want to have question, maybe they cannot think about something very clear now, but in the night often you say, oh, that question I should have asked. So you can always do that. There is people online on Facebook asking if the talk will be available. Yes, it will be available on Facebook, Pint of Science. Yes, and then I think we can thank you again for your very interesting presentation, and we can move on the schedule now. So thank you a lot. And we will continue with a quiz as usual. Now you know how it is organized. No, sorry, we don't have the quiz now. We have first the second speaker. Yeah, it's right. We have the second speaker now. So sorry. I will present the second speaker, who is Anis Meschichi, and that will present in few minutes. So sorry for the delay. I am a little bit late. I just want to present your new speakers now. Here we go. Can you see? No, you cannot. Then you can. Okay, so Hannes Meschichi is a PhD student at the Swedish University of Agricultural Science, working in the group of Stephanie Rosa. He is interested in plant biology and more specifically on understanding how plants cope and respond to the environment at the cellular molecular level. His PhD research focuses on understanding the mechanisms that allow plants to efficiently repair damages on their DNA. Please, Anis, let us know more about what you work with.
With great pleasure. Thank you very much for this introduction, and thank you very much for the invitation. So the only thing that I can start my video. Great. Up. So I don't know, do you see? So I will share my screen. I cannot share my screen. Share screen. Yes. There is a tiny problem. I cannot share my my screen. I think
Can you share it now? Can you try it again?
Yeah, no, it says that it will stop other screen sharing. Great, yeah. Great, yes. Sorry. Up là, so I'm on two screen. Tac, tac. Up. So.
Nice.
So, so thank you. Thank you again for the invitation. And so when I got actually the invitation so I'm Anis Meschichi, I'm a plant biologist, PhD student in SLU in the plant biology department. So when I got the invitation, the first instinct was to do a presentation about GMOs, but I'm not good in debates. So I thought that I will more convince you why plants are awesome. So since a really young age, I was really interested into plants, into flowers, gardening, and that is mainly from my mother's side. And so already from that young age, I was really curious about how plants grow, and particularly one question, which is how plants can grow in really hard environment, really complex, really extreme environment, sorry. Like, for example, drought, as you can see here with all the cacti, and in cold with this flower in the snow. And actually, in one lab meeting with my colleagues, we talked about another extreme environment where plant can grow, and I never thought about this one actually. So Is anyone can recognize this environment where this picture have been taken?
I have no idea.
So now if I show you this other half, which is maybe have more clues. Actually, this place, it's Chernobyl. So it's in Ukraine, and it have been the place where something horrible happened to humanity, which is a nuclear disaster in '96. And it caused thousands and thousands of cancer around the area and also in Europe. But really interestingly, in this area, the vegetation started to recover 3 years after the catastrophe. And now 70% of the region is covered by trees. And so now the question is, so let's picture that. So if humans, animals, or birds was at the same place 3 years after the catastrophe, with the same radiation condition, everybody will be, unfortunately, dead and not survive. So here the question is, why trees can survive with this kind of environment, which is radiation, and where to find their secret? Is it in their cells? Is it in their DNA? Or is it in how they grow? So to answer those questions, which is really the mystery that researchers want to understand, we have to first define why radiation is really toxic and really dangerous. So during this nuclear event, what happened is that there was a release of gamma rays. So gamma rays is really is particles that are really full of energy that will go through the matter. And for example, if someone goes next to gamma ray, the skin will start to burn and destroy the skin. And for cells, if we look at it more precisely, what will happen is that those gamma ray will damage the cellular structure, but also some cellular machinery that is important for the cell to function well. But the cell can grow back those things. It's not a problem for the cell, like to build anything like from the ground. But one thing that is important to not damage is what is it inside this tiny space that we call nucleus. This is where there is all the all the information, the genetic information, and more particularly a structure that we call the DNA structure. So this DNA molecule is like a cookbook. It contains all the recipe for the cell to function well. But when there is radiation like gamma ray, it will remove some parts of this molecule. And it's kind of like removing a piece of a cookbook. You will not end up with the same recipes at the end, and it might be not good. And this is the same case here. Like if we remove a bit of information that we call mutation, we can end up with diseases such as cancer, for example. So that is for animals. So I will explain briefly what is cancer, but there is a beautiful talk that I see yesterday, actually, that was talking about cancer. So I will be really brief about that. So what is cancer? So basically our cells, like during our development, are multiplying. So the cells will divide. And in this DNA molecule, we have information that is like a traffic light to say to the cell, no, it's not time to divide, or yes, it's time to divide. And after dividing, it's time to stop. But in the case of mutations on the DNA, it can impact some parts of the DNA that are involved in, for example, stopping cell division. So if it is the case, the cells will be always dividing, because they don't have the information to say stop. And at the end of all that, we will end up with a structure that we call tumor. But in 84% of the cases, we don't die from cancer. It's more due to another factor, which is the metastasis, which is when the cells multiply and go through the bloodstream and go in other organs. And unfortunately, if one organ is damaged from this period, it can lead to the damage of other organs because they're all collaborating together. And at the end, the person might not survive from this. But now let's go back to plants. So do plants have cancer? Do they can die from cancer, and do they have metastasis? So for the first question, yes, plants have cancer. So for example, I can show you from those two pictures. Here, it's actually a tumor that you can find like in everyday life around you. And that is on the tree, and others that you can find on the root. Are they due to radiation? No, it's more due to infections. Like for this one is going to be fungi infection, and this one is going to be bacterial infection. But plants don't have those kind of cancer from radiation. Why? So to answer to this question, we have to see first an aspect that plants have had for years is adaptation. Because plants don't walk. They cannot, it's not like us. If we are too cold, we can go home, or if it is too hot, we can go swim in the pool. No, they have to stay in their environment. So that's why they had like to find ways to fight against heavy metals, heat, cold, and another kind of radiation, which is UV light. So how plants have found a way to resist of like those radiation. So in general, when we see the plant DNA and the human DNA, we have the same tools to repair the DNA. But plants, because they have to deal with other environmental things around them, they had an extra kind of tools that are really specific to plants. And also, they have, for some of the tools, a copy of them, which make them really more resistant to radiation. That's why if a plant lacks in one copy of a DNA repair tool, it will survive because there is other copies, but for humans, it might be really dangerous and leads to the cancer, actually. But now, why do plants do not die of cancer? Why? So that we have to check in our development. So us humans, we have what we call an embryoning development, which means that we have all the organs when we are a tiny fetus in the belly of the mom. And from that stage to the end, we keep those organs. And unfortunately, if we have like the heart, if we lose a heart, if we lose a brain, it will be not able to regenerate another one. But plants, them, they are incredible because they have what we call a post-embryonic development, which means that during their whole lifespan, from the seed to the end, they can grow new organs from leaf, root, flowers, fruits. And that's why if you remove the leaf of a flower or a plant, it will not care. It will grow another one. And also, most interestingly, you can also from one leaf, for example, grow another plant. And that is what gardeners use as a technique, actually. From one leaf, you can see here, you can have new cacti growing with roots.
Yeah.
And, yes.
Yeah, it's exactly what we do with plants, and personally, I didn't know how that was possible, but now I know. Thank you.
Exactly. This is an old secret from my family. And so this is actually really interesting, this phenomenon, because it's happening only on plants. But for us humans, let's say Chris Hemsworth, the best actor ever, if you cut his arm, you will be not able to have a second Chris Hemsworth, and his arm will not grow back. And you will just end up with a lawsuit, which is not good. So yes, that's why for a plant can live without an organ. It's no problem. It will grow another one. But for humans, if one is going down, the rest is going down, and we are not able to grow new ones. So that's why plants cannot die from cancer. But now, let's say that plants can have a cancer. Can they do this metastasis phenomenon? So to answer this question, we have to check into the cell structure. So us humans, we have a cell that have like a membrane, as you can see here, and everything is inside, like with the nucleus, for example. And for plants, we have also this cell membrane that is here, but plants have an extra structure that we don't have, which is a cell wall that is here. And this cell wall is basically like having the cell in the box. So it brings more a rigid structure, and it's more tighter. And this structure, unfortunately, or good for them actually, make the cell really hard to move around. But for us humans, because we don't have this cell wall, the cell can propagate in all the body and cause this metastasis. So that's why in plants they cannot do metastasis. But now let's go back to Chernobyl. Chernobyl region that is now famous with this new show on TV. So our plants for Chernobyl are adapting because it's a zone, for example, around the sarcophagus, which is still with a lot of radiation around. And we still found plants that are close. So here, to find out if those plants have a special mechanisms, they took plants that are closer and compare it to the same plants that are really far away from this sarcophagus. And they found out that the plants that are really close have one difference, is that when they are exposed to radiation, they will, instead of having like one DNA repair tool, the plant will release an army of those tools to repair the DNA in a more efficient way, compared to the plants that are really far and unfortunately they just use some tools. So yes, so those plants are adapting now in Chernobyl with those kind of mechanisms. But now, like the most important question, this is a question that I have during all my Christmas to my family, from my family. Why studying plant secrets is so important? I have only one example. This is from this tree. This tree is really beautiful. It's like a Christmas tree. It don't seem really to be important, but it's from a family which is called the Taxus family. And this tree have the mechanisms to defend themselves against pathogens by using a molecule which is called Taxol. This molecule, yes, have been extracted from a researcher team and have been studied a lot for those properties. But actually, one day, an organization that was working on finding new drugs to cure cancer did a huge call of a lot of researchers to say, we take any kind of molecules that you have and we will try them to see if it can cure cancer or decrease the division of cells. And Taxol was the first candidate actually that shows a really high power of saying to the cell to stop dividing. And that's why now this molecule, Taxol, is used as an anti-cancer drug around the world, and it allows to cure ovarian cancer, breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, and other kinds of cancers. But it's not the only molecule that we found in plants that are now used to cure cancer. There is a lot of those, and they are saving a lot of lives before and right now. And there is still other molecules that are studied right now for other cancers. So that's why plants are amazing. It's because they have this post-embryonic development. Their cell structure are really strong. They have molecular mechanisms that allow them to resist radiation, and they can adapt to those kind of radioactive conditions. And also they save lives. So thank you very much for your attention. And I would like to say thanks to my colleagues for their help, and also to my team. So here's all the sources for the information if you're interested. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anis, for this very clear presentation, very interesting also. Yeah, that's fantastic. I have personally heard about these three. Are they from the United States somewhere?
Yes, so you found them more, yeah, in the US actually, yes.
Yeah, very good. It's the same, we will have question in the chat or question online. Yeah. If you can see the question, I can also repeat the question at the same time. So we begin already with question with Florent, who asks, you said plants are resistant to radiation. How will they react to be put in the microwave?
Please don't do that. So I don't think they can resist as much radiation like microwaves. I don't think so, but maybe actually to few infrared dosage it can, because actually plants are really sensitive to those infrared lights to actually for their internal clocks or this kind of signaling. So yes, so not too much, but
okay, so if they will follow your advice, they will don't do that.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, another comment from Stephanie with amazing talk, except that she thinks that you have done a mistake and it is Keanu Reeves who is the best.
I know.
I also think you have done a mistake, and I don't think about Keanu Reeves, but that we can discuss further on. But I think the consequence is the same. If you cut the arm, they will not have a new arm anyway. Who is the best? I think it doesn't matter really very much. But and there is no question. She said that it's because the plants are so resistant that humans are so good to kill them. Yeah, that's yeah.
This is unfortunately one of the big reasons that nature is going so bad, is also the humanity that unfortunately.
Yeah, the humanity influence.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But in one hand, this is why I was really interested into this Chernobyl event, which is like an accident that the humanity have done. And you can see that actually Mother Nature can take back a land that humans have destroyed. And those lands now, like humans or animals, was not able to come back. And that's why there is this beautiful sentence, which is, when plants are first, humans go seconds. And this is what I love with this concept.
Yeah, we have seen exactly the same phenomenon with the fires in Australia.
Yeah.
Last year. We already see less than 1 year after a plant growing already from nothing. So
this is crazy.
It's really crazy.
That's why those plants are full of secrets and are really interesting to see.
Yeah. Another question from Yesa.
Yes.
Do you know if there is a plant that is especially resistant to radiation, even more than plants in general?
So I don't think there is plants that are really especially resistant to high radiation. One that is like that actually is we have more like the iconic plants, which is, for example, the one next to Chernobyl, or there is one that was I don't remember this nuclear bomb place in Japan where
Hiroshima.
exactly, thank you very much,
Mm.
where they have found a tree that still is growing and resists to those radiation, that the explosion, the radiation that was there. But an organism that is resistant, actually they found a bacteria that is resistant to radiation, and not only resistant, it can take those particles that are really highly radioactive and kind of treat them to bring down the radiation. So that's why this bacteria, so I don't have, so Gliomargarita, so this bacteria is now suggested to be used to clean areas that had like radioactivity.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Another question again, talking about plants, you mentioned anti-cancer drugs.
Mm.
There are so much anti-malarial or other drugs from plants. Do we have some lessons to take from Indians in Amazonian Aboriginal or other people? Yeah, and another question after.
So I would say yes and no for the first question. So yes, we can actually, for example, the taxus tree have been discovered, like for those, no, sorry, another kind of tree have been discovered to have a molecule to cure, for example, headache. And it have been from the, oh, how do you call this part in English? I have it only in French. But well, the stem of the tree have this molecule, and now it's used as an anti-migraine molecule. But actually, during my research for this subject, I found out that there is some websites that are using, for example, cures for cancer because they have like molecules inside that might be efficient to cure cancer, but a lot of them don't have scientific proof behind, and some of them are really toxic. And I think more especially about the vitamin B13, that is actually not a vitamin, but people have been using that as an anti-drug that is in almonds, and unfortunately a lot of people died from that. So I would say yes and no. And yeah, sorry for this long answer.
And another question, can we think about gene therapy, CRISPR-Cas9 or other techniques to finally help us fighting cancer by uptaking plant genes for DNA repair?
And I have the bark, exactly, yeah. The bark. Thank you very much. So we can, I think we cannot, so that I don't have the precise information about it, but I would say that actually doing gene therapy by using plant genes, it might be not possible because the plant genes need plant-specific way to regulate the expression of those genes and all those kind of DNA properties that the plants have. So I don't think it's possible, but maybe with few years, everything can be possible.
Yeah, let's see. So thank you again for very, very interesting talks. The day is not finished for us now because we have this quiz that we usually do. And today, because it's the last day of the Pint of Science Festival for 2020, we have this quiz at the end. And I think we will be able to give a little gift to the one who is winning. So please stay online and participate to the quiz. So I will present the quiz now. So I will share my screen again.
Stop sharing.
Yes. So the quiz, it is always the same thing. It's 10 questions. There is 4 different propositions, and there is only one single choice, only one correct response. It's a real-time vote. I will send all the questions at the same time. You will have all the 10 questions. You will have 10 minutes, 1 minute per question. And at the end of that, we will see the answer all together. So I hope you're ready to receive the quiz for today. Okay, I send the quiz now, and you have then 10 minutes. Okay, great. So I hand the polling now. And maybe I can share the results. Can you see the results on your screen? I hope so. So let's have a look to the responses. The first one was, of course, where on the human body would you find the papilla? And it is on the tongue. The second one, everybody has a good response. Who wrote a brief story of time? And of course, answer number 2, Stephen Hawking. Yes. Third question, what type of energy does the brain need? And it is glucose, mainly. Fourth question, out of the 7 colors of the rainbow, which one is in the middle? And the correct answer is in fact green. And there is not a lot of people having the good response here. How many hearts does the octopuses have? And the correct response here is 3. And the same, it was a difficult question. 6, what is the most abundant gas in the Earth's atmosphere? And it is nitrogen. Great. 7, how long does it take for the sun's light to reach Earth? And it's 8 minutes, approximately. What studies a myrmecologist? And I think here Swedish people are a little bit favorized because how do you say myra in Swedish? It's for saying ants, in fact. And that was the correct answer. 9 question, which is the most sensitive of the senses? And the correct response is smell. And the last question, it was a little bit difficult, that one. What is the most common chemical element in the universe, not on the Earth as before? And the correct answer was hydrogen. So I will have a look and see who is the winner, and I will contact the winner afterwards. Yeah, we have now been together for 3 evenings. On Monday, we have had Mathieu Linares and David Dauquier. Mathieu would talk about visualization of molecules, and David will talk about the sea ice. Yesterday, we have had Claudia Moore and Isabel Pires, and today we have had Miguel and Anis. And all the talk will be available online on our website, Pint of Science Sweden. And so we need some time to make this presentation looks good for sharing it on our website. But in the meantime, you will find the presentation on Facebook. There is only one missing, that's the one from Mathieu, and I will make sure to have that before the end of the week on Facebook. So Pint of Science Festival online for this year 2020 is now it's done, and we hope to see you in 2021. We will still be there sharing science. So thank you very much. If you have questions, I will stay online a few minutes. And also you are always very welcome to contact us via Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course via our website. Thank you very much and keep sharing good science.
Hello guys.